like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity for or with white males over 50. Um, if you're not a white male over 50, but you have white males over 50 in your life, I think this will be a good podcast for you. If you're a white male over 50, I think it'll be a great podcast for you if you want it to be. If you don't, then it won't. It's up to you. And um, so white males over 50, they struggle. What do you mean by that, Mark? Good question. Um, so, I believe that I have white privilege. People say there's white privilege. I believe in white privilege. And when I say, I have white privilege, um, what do I mean by that? Like, what do you mean by that, Mark? Good question, right? And so my parents, I think they taught me how to think. They exposed me to ways of thinking, of working hard and earning money. That's privileged thinking. Not everybody's raised like that. You work hard, you save money. I was taught to be generous. My brother Dan, he said he struggled with it, but he's better now. From it. And my oldest brother Vern, who's very smart, very important. He is very generous. Just ask him, and he'll tell you he's very generous. And so, um, and so, so the white male over 50, he struggles. Often, like my dad didn't even know, and he was a pastor. My dad didn't know like what he was put on this planet for. Seems like he said he was never called to be a pastor, and he was a pastor his whole life. And it's like, and so I think a white male over 50, it seems like, I forget who I was talking to a while back, and I said, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so the, basic needs of survival, food and shelter and clothing. Once you get that, then you move to, something else and something else and something else until you get to self-actualization. And so I was raised in DuPage County, yeah, in the Chicago area, which is one of the most affluent counties in the world. And so I was part of a system, and it's not systematic. I don't think it's systematic, like trying to hold other people back. I think it's like the way the success we have in life or don't have in life is really how we think. If we're exposed to people who are thinking a certain way, we're going to tend to think that way. Although my parents thought a certain way about being a Christian or the importance of being Baptist or something like that. And I think very differently than they do in that, I think. And so I think that like white males are amazingly confident, but then they also lack a tremendous amount of confidence too. And they don't know it. They work really hard, but they don't. They're like, they don't know that they're not maybe that self-aware. So they don't know that, like, if you tell a white male, over 50 that, he's entitled, self-righteous, and a victim, he's probably not going to believe it. he might actually get angry and upset, or he might just dismiss you. So the white male over 50 can see how the millennials or Gen X's or whatever the different group, they can see how they're entitled and they're self-righteous and they're victims, but they don't see it in themselves. And I'm a white male over 50. And if I tell white males over 50 that they're entitled, self-righteous, and victims, they act just like the Gen Xers do. Same thing. They push you out. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to have conversations with you. They don't want you in their life. Why? They think it's out of confidence, but that's not what it is. It's out of fear of being exposed. They're really imposters and they don't even know it. So how do you know if you over identify with a group? So people tend to want to group together. Why? To gain the strengths and the benefit of the group. But then they also don't want to be stereotyped as part of that group. They want all the benefits of the group, but they don't want any of the baggage that comes from the group. And so a great video is, Bonhoeffer's, theory or law of stupidity or something. Like we're quick to see that in other people. So how do you know if you're over identifying with a group? It's pretty simple. Like, I'm a Christian, go to church every week, have since I was born. So if somebody says to me, Mark, Christians are self-centered, self-absorbed, narcissistic, they're entitled, they don't take ownership, they're victims, I'd say, I see that. Like, there's not any defensiveness on it. There's not well, that's not. If you said that about white males, I'd say I can see that. If you said that about the Boersma family, I'd say I can see that. And so being self-aware is something that's very hard to do. And we tend to want to be around other people who are like us, who will tell us the things that we want to hear. We tell them the things they want to hear. They tell us the things we want to hear. And we all go away feeling really good. But it's not the truth. And so that means that we're enslaved. So in the pre-show, you always want to show up for the pre-show and the post. You just do. That's where the real excitement happens. And so we go around the virtual room of the people who are live, and you want to participate in the live, I'd encourage you to. And so, we go around the virtual room and ask people what they want to accomplish. And Elaine, said she wanted to accomplish, the words that she said was, I want to be a better leader. I want to learn to listen. I want to grow. I want to do that. What I heard her saying is she wanted to talk about the video of, Bonhoeffer's video, the theory of stupidity. Like, how can you be a leader? How can you lead other people if we're not self-aware of our own weaknesses and the downsides of being part of a group? And so if we over-identify with a group, anything that's said about the group. So with women, if I say something about women, they get really pusty, angry, upset, defensive. It's like, okay, but they want to be an individual. They fight for individuality. Like, I don't want to be part of a group, but you want all the benefits of the group without being part of the group. And you don't want the downsides. Well, that's pretty immature thinking. And then, Ken said he wasn't sure what he wanted to accomplish in the podcast today. And Kenny said that he wanted to go ahead and help Ken. And that's just, often that's a good example of, white males, they don't know what they want. They just don't. And, Kenny's in his 20s and they just want to help the white male, over 50, which is really cool to see that. And then Rosanna said that, she hates getting compared to people. What does that mean? So I will compare Rosanna, my wife of 39 years, I will compare her to certain people, like maybe my son-in-law, or maybe my brother Dan, or maybe other people. She will get very angry and upset about that. What does that reveal?
She doesn't have a very high opinion of the people that she's getting
Right? I mean,
compared to.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I see a behavior, a way of thinking, something she says, and I compare her to somebody else, and she gets angry and upset about that. I didn't say it's bad. I just said you're like so and so, and she gets angry. So she doesn't think highly of them.
Hmm.
She doesn't say, well, is that a good thing or bad thing? So she doesn't say that. What's interesting is uh is that Steve Casey, we were at a coffee connection. I'm sitting at a table and he walks up, he says, we're talking, he says, Mark, do you understand that you could be more powerful than Hitler? I said, I do. Like, I didn't take it as a negative, you know. Ken's wife, Emily, we were talking once on the step of the church, and we were talking about a bunch of different things. Like everything, like that moment in time, everything froze. And she says, you know, you could be like the Antichrist. I said, right? I've thought about that. She says, I was just joking. I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah. What? Like, what? You think I'm the Antichrist? Wait, what would cause you to, oh my goodness. Like, oh, like, it's just like, I'm like, and it's like, so why is it that other people are compared to people and they're all gonna get all angry and all upset about it? And I'm compared to Hitler and the Antichrist. And it's like, yeah, I get that.
I'd say the difference is the thinking.
What do you mean by that?
You look at it as a way to improve the way you are, and the others would look at it as a negative thing because they see the negative in it. They don't look to improve. They're looking at the bad part of it.
Right?
So maybe it's like I was thinking, what if is it bad to see the bad in others, and then that results in you becoming defensive when you're compared to other people? Or is it just that some people see the bad and they don't see the good in other people, and when they're compared to the people, they don't they automatically, as a reflex, they think of the bad in that person.
Right. And I think a reflex should be, when I see something bad in somebody else that has a reflex, it's a reflex. The first thing, like that person's an idiot. Well, why do you say they're an idiot? Because of this and this. Well, where is that in your own life, Mark? Like it's just a reflex. I mean, I would think that one of the things in seminary that they would teach you immediately, first day, day one of seminary, first day one of seminary is, you're no better than anybody else. Do you understand that? There's a possibility you're worse. That's why you want to be a pastor, you know? I mean, I would think that that's what they would teach. They would embed that in somebody. I would think that they would just embed in somebody knowledge puffeth up. So all the studying we're doing of the Bible in seminary, it's going to puff you up. You're going to think you're self-righteous. You're going to think you're smart. You just are. I mean, I would think they would just pound it into them. They don't. They don't. And so, I was asked to be part of a pastor's group. I'm like, but I'm not a pastor. They're like, it's okay. I was part of the group for a year. My heart broke for the pastors because they came and complained about their congregation and how tough they had it. Really? Like my heart just went out to them. And nobody would say something. And I didn't even say something to them about it. I was there to help, but they could feel the energy. They could feel the energy. Like, okay, so you can't get people to volunteer. You can't get people to follow through. Like, well, I can help. I can do this and this and this. And so I had an optimistic approach. Like, I'll help. I'll jump in. I'll do these things. They didn't like that. They wanted to be victims. They wanted to be self-righteous, and they wanted to have entitlement because it's addictive. So I don't know, 20 years ago, like I had an experience where I was judging one of my children and I said, you know, what this child is doing it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's just devastating. It's just, I mean, it's just so wrong what they're doing. And I don't know, God somehow said to me, Mark, like he's shaking his head. That's what I felt like. He's just shaking his head. It's like, Mark, you don't understand. And I'm like, I want to understand, God. I really do. I mean, this is one of my children. I love them. I want to understand. I want to in the worst way. God's like you don't get me. I'm like, I know, I get that. I don't get you. I want to get you, but I don't, and I want to. And it's like, Mark, you think you know your child, but you really don't. You don't understand what that one's gone through. You don't understand. You just don't. Like I could be judging you harsher. I could be looking at you in a worse situation, in a worse place than I'm looking at then. I didn't hear God saying he was looking at me. He said I could look at you in being in a worse place than they are. And I got defensive with God and I got, well, but God, they're doing this and this and this, and I'm doing this and this and this. I felt the energy just like not of disgust, just of, you're so stupid, Mark. You're so clueless. Like you don't understand. You don't understand how I look at people. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand. I do not, I want to, but I don't. And it's like, do you really want to, Mark? I'm like, I do. And then all of a sudden it's like John Wayne Gacy came to mind. And it's like, you know, so he's the guy in Chicago that, I don't know, sexually abused and mutilating, cut people up and put them in his crawl space, like 20, 30 boys. I mean, it was just, I don't know, a lot. So he's a mass murderer sexually. It's like, so God's like, Mark, I could look at you as in a worse situation. And if you were his same personality and you were raised how he was raised, and if you were, you know, if you were this, if you were in appearance, you had the same exact situation that he had, you could be in a worse, you could do far, you could have murdered 100, you could sexually abuse, you know, hundreds of people. Like, really? It's like, yeah. And it's like, wow. So I could be worse than John Wayne Gacy. Uh-huh. It's like, I don't even know what you do with that. So I internalized it. I internalized it, and it's like, so what do you do with that? I don't know. So Rosanna, does that, answer your question kind of, or not so much?
Yeah.
Ginger Ann, what would you like to accomplish?
I'd like to know how to find hope when you don't feel like you have any.
Yeah, good question. Can anybody translate what I just said to Ginger Ann?
You don't know how to help?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good translation, Ben. You rock, buddy.
Mhm.
So, you know, so Melissa, one of our daughters, she called me a few months back and she says, Dad, like there's no hope. Like I have no hope. And I'm like, I get it, honey. And she's like, I mean, what do you do when you have no hope? It's like, I mean, I keep going and it's like, but she's like, you feel like, what do you do when you feel like quitting? And I'm like, is that an option? And she said, well, it's always an option. I said, well, if it's an option, then I'm going to quit. So for me, there's just some things that, you know, and so the, Brown Center for Autism, the founder of that in Nashville, I was there, years ago and working to raise funds and help. And she said in behavioral science, if you do the same thing over, if somebody does an illicit behavior, something wrong, something bad, something that's hurtful, whatever, she said, if you respond the same way 3 times or more, you become part of the problem. Now, Ginger Ann, I don't know, but for me, like it's like a combination of a safe. And I've tried every possible combination and nothing works. Like it doesn't work. So then I go back again and I just like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to do it again and I'm going to try it again. And I'm just going to keep trying it until it's just relentless. Ken
So if
has,
you tried all the combinations, do you try and blow it up or do you try and drill through the combination thing and put some nitrous in it or some kind of other,
right, right. So this is walls of opportunity. It's another natural law. And so when you have, a problem in life, when you have something that's not going well, you go over, under the wall, you go to left, you go to right, you blow it up, you tear it down somehow, some way, you're going to make a breakthrough. The bigger the wall, the thicker the wall, the harder it is to make the breakthrough, the more important it is to make that breakthrough. I think a lot of times it's like 3 feet from gold. We often give up right before we do make the breakthrough. But there is um like leverage. I know this is a swear word to Ken, something in seminary that you're not supposed to use, although pastors use it all the time. Pastors and your mom and grandmothers, they're the best, bar none. I mean, they're bar none, pastors and moms and grandmothers, are the best at using leverage of anybody. They use emotional leverage. I mean, I was reading this last week and coming up on the, Easter holiday and stuff for the Christians and stuff. Like it hadn't hit me before now, but I was reading about about Jesus' first miracle, which is turning, water into wine. And so the good Baptist training of that, it's like, well, we don't drink wine. And, and my kids use that, the ones who drink. And I'm like, it's up to you. Anyways, so like it's funny. It's funny. Like you can just imagine like this guy who's I think 30 years old, 27 to 30, something like this. So he's a grown man. And his mom says, hey, Jesus, hey, son, I need you to do a favor for me, turn water into wine. And Jesus says, it's not my time. Like, I can't do that. It's not supposed to happen. And what's the mom's response? She totally ignores him. The son of God. She just ignores him. just totally ignores him. Like he didn't even speak. I'm not going to listen to you, son. Like, do what he tells you to do. Like, just totally ignored him. Like, it's just, and he did it. Like, he did it. He violated like the time frame. Like, and that should go ahead and humble you moms. Like, wow, I got to be careful. I'm not saying any of your kids are Jesus or anything. I'll verify they're not. Like, wonder if he cried. Wonder if he sassed his mom at all. I mean, he didn't when he was 30, he just did what she told him to do, even though he wasn't supposed to do it. It's like, I wonder what that is. Anyways, Ginger, and I think if it's, any encouragement, I think you're doing great. I don't know what you're going through. I would say on a 1 to 10, there's pressure that's building. There's pressure that's building. And I am amazed, I am amazed at at you. And so, when do you strike the rock and when do you speak to it? And so I mean, how appropriate that this is, for white males over 50. So hopefully the white males over 40 are going to go ahead and, actually turn 50, or the ones in their 30s will turn 50. So I think that a lot of things, if they're not caught in childhood, then it becomes more so, later. Like it's like a tree that's crooked. If you don't straighten it out, it gets harder and harder and impossible at some point to change. And so, all things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. It's like, yeah, but what kind of nitroglycerin, what kind of movement is going to be required? Questions on that, Ginge?
No.
And so, on a 1 to 10, on a 1 to 10, I would say your father's running right now, about a 2.5. In a higher dimension, I've shifted it into a higher gear. And so am I being too patient? Maybe. Should I be more involved? Maybe. Should I be less involved? Maybe. And so, there's more and more, so it's interesting on how the white male, especially the Christian white male, it's interesting to me how they twist scripture for their own benefit, for their own, benefit. And so I love Matthew 18. I mean, the amount of pain I went through because of that verse. Wow. Like, wow. Whoa. Wow. But man, I'm liking that verse more and more. It's exposure. It's just exposure. It's like 1 to 2 witnesses, go one-on-one. That doesn't work. Bring a couple witnesses. That doesn't work. Take it to the whole body. Well, what does that mean? Well, in the GRBC, that means go to your constitution that man-made and, say this is our interpretation of the Constitution. And yeah, it might not be exactly what the Bible says, or it's our interpretation. And then, we're going to, cut it out. And this is what we're going to do. And it's like, so the people, you can always tell the people who don't want things to be public, evil, wrong, darkness. They love black. They love the darkness. They don't want things being exposed. So hopefully this has been helpful. Wait until, next podcast. I have a feeling that things might get a little spicy. Spicy is good. I like spicy. Always remember we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.